Olá, pessoal. Tudo bem, and welcome to the Brazil Crypto Report podcast, where we talk to the builders, entrepreneurs, and influencers from across the Brazil ecosystem. My name is Aaron Stanley, and today we're talking to Andre Portilho, who is the head of digital assets at BTG Pactual, which is one of the largest banks in Brazil and in all of Latin America. Andre and his team recently launched a dollar-pegged stablecoin, becoming among the first, if not the first, banks worldwide to issue a stablecoin for retail usage. Andre, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you, especially with these interesting times that we're living in, right? Pleasure to be here and talking about not only BTG Dol, but wherever you want to talk about regarding cryptos and markets. Let's go for it.
All right, yeah, let's do it. It's always good chatting with you. First time, long time, I guess long time listener, first time, guest on the podcast. I mean, we've known each other for a few years now. It's nice to finally get
Yeah.
you on the show here. Why don't you give us a bit of a background just on yourself, and then kind of your path into crypto to get started
hmm
here.
No, amazing, amazing. Short story. I'm a partner here at BTG. BTG is the largest investment bank in Latin America, one of the largest banks in Brazil. We are a Latin America bank with a global reach. We help a lot Brazilian and Latin American clients to access Latin American markets and global markets, and we do also a lot to help international clients to access Latin America markets. So this is our goal. I used to run the options desk here at BTG when we start trading crypto back in 17. That's where and how we started. Let's say down the rabbit hole, right? So we start trading Bitcoin, and then what's a process, Aaron, of not only studying the technology but also using the technology and evolving our view, our vision, and our mindset regarding what are the transformations that this technology will bring first to the financial industry and probably also to other industries, right? We start trading 17. In 19, we issued the first security token done by a bank in the world. We basically tokenized a portfolio of distressed real estate here in Brazil. We issued and distributed this for a group of international clients. Then we were the first ones who launched a Bitcoin fund managed by the bank in 2021. And just last year, we launched a 100% crypto dedicated platform, Mynt. That was in August last year. And this year, we use all the infrastructure that we use to build Mint to also offer crypto to our clients in our banking platforms. So right now, if you are a client of BTG Pactual, you can buy and sell 23 crypto currencies at the very same app that you use to invest in equities, bonds, or funds, or whatever. Uh, and I mean, to finish, I mean, we have a vision that again, this is a crypto and blockchain will be the new rails of the financial industry. Okay, and that's why we are developing everything that we are developing. I mean, just last week we launched BTG Dol, which basically, as far as we are concerned, the first USD stable coin issued by a bank in the world. Okay.
Yeah, and I'd love to dive into this a bit more. I think it's super interesting, and as I was writing my article or my newsletter for last week, I was doing some research. I was like, is there anybody else who's issued like a stable coin like this? And I couldn't
I
find anybody. I couldn't. I mean, there's like JPM coin. There's the National Bank of Australia, but that's all more
exactly.
like kind of wholesale kind of settlement between institutional
Yeah,
clients.
the bank in
And I couldn't.
Australia, I think they issue Australian dollar stable coin for the wholesale, if I'm not wrong, Aaron.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like a totally different product, basically, right? Like where what you've launched here is an actual. I mean, it's a USDC type, equivalent that is aimed at the general invest, like your existing kind of retail and institutional investors basically to use in their portfolios, which is yeah. And I guess I'm always like, having been in crypto for, crypto journalism for some time now, you always get skeptical whenever somebody claims to be the first of something, right? Because it's usually just marketing spin. But in this case, like I couldn't find anybody else, and I have not heard of anybody else who's done this. So I'm inclined to believe your claim
Yeah,
here. So
I
congratulations, that's great.
thank you. And we always try to find a lot. I mean, to not will misinform our clients, and you can always be first in something, right, Aaron? So you can just, well, if you narrow your reach, you can all. But in that case, I think for USD retail stablecoin, I think it's the first. Okay, and
So talk a bit about. I think there's two parts of this that are really interesting. I mean, I think just the fact, the product itself, that it's coming out of an actual publicly traded, regulated traditional financial institution. I mean, this is the type. I mean, and it's going to be years before something like this ever happens in the U.S. If it ever does happen, that a bank such as, a large major bank in the country would be issuing its own stable coin. Um, so that's particularly interesting. And then also the timing of it, given the current sort of climate around stable coins, and just given the events of the last few months with bank runs, and
mhm.
these coins breaking their pegs, and all sorts of kind of crazy stuff happening, regulatory enforcement actions, and the whole, like. So maybe talk a bit just about um, like what was the genesis of this idea, and what is sort of the unique value proposition that you think you're bringing to the market,
Mhm.
vis-a-vis some of the existing stable coins that are on the market now? Why would an investor maybe prefer this over the existing alternatives?
Yeah, no, it's interesting, Aaron, because I mean, the Genesis actually was in the beginning of the year, okay, when we designed. I mean, we were, let's say, rambling around with the idea for some time, but we really took the decision in the beginning of this year, and that was before even the problems with SVB and so on and so forth. But at the end, we already had the feeling that there was room in the market to a project like that. First and foremost, the goal is to have easy and safe way for our clients to access dollars. Okay, you have already a good understanding of Brazil, so understand well. Brazilians, well, they always having trying to have some of their exposure or their allocation in dollars because it's a strong currency, and and the options that you have right now to do that in Brazil, they are not necessarily easy or efficient. Okay, so we have FX funds. You have, like, you can buy, let's say, actual dollars and store in your at your home, which probably is not something that I recommend that you have a large amounts at home, right? But I mean, uh, or I mean, you need to open a U.S. account, which is, well, I mean, there's a lot of friction, and so this is the first, I mean, value proposition. And right now you can pretty much easily buy at Mint or at BTG platforms, in like 3 clicks you can buy BTG Dol. So it's the price are very competitive. So that's the first use case. But we have more, I would say, ambitious goals as well with these, because given the recent turmoils in markets and banking crisis and depegging and some, let's say, I would say, more shady structures with some stable coins that we have out there, I think there is room for a stable coin issued by a public company, heavily regulated institution. As you know, I mean, banks in Brazil, they are heavily regulated, right? And it's funny because when you look at the situation that we experienced with SVB, man, that will never happen in a big bank in Brazil. We are way more regulated than this. So if you look at the balance
Mm.
sheets of the banks in Brazil right now, they're very, very sound. Okay, and so the idea is to, in the next phase, open for the market. Okay, is to truly be offering a new option for people to interact with dollars on the blockchain. That's the goal. Okay, and again, we think there's room for that, given everything that I told you. And the other thing, Aaron, is that some of the things that happened in crypto last year, and I talk this a lot in these recent days, okay? That basically the crypto industry did all the mistakes that the financial industry took like 100 years to do. The crypto industry did in 1 year, okay? So a lot of these problems, we already been there, okay? And BTG, we can transit pretty well between the traditional world and the crypto world. I think that's one of our strengths, and to understand the new technology, but also to understand that uh, probably what will happen is that these things will converge. Okay, we need to have regulation, we need to have governance, we need to have compliance. Okay, we need to have like some good understanding about the risk. Okay, because clearly some of these problems that we had in crypto last year and some of the problems that we had in banking in the US this year, people don't have a clue about risk. Okay, and when you put all of that together, we believe that okay, we are in a good position to offer a product like that.
Great, great, and obviously the value proposition of the coin being issued by a heavily regulated institution that has a degree of trustworthiness to it, or at least a track record of trustworthiness, right? I guess they may not necessarily trust you, but like there's at least like a track record there that okay,
Yeah,
they've been around for a while and they're still
and
operating, right?
and not only
Uh,
the track record. Sorry to interrupt, Warren, but not only track record, but 1.3 trillion reais in assets under management. So it's not
yeah,
just the time, right? So
yeah, yeah, and so what is the I mean, what's your so it's I assume you're using kind of the traditional kind of stable coin issuer model, or you take a dollar in
yes.
deposits and then or the equivalent of a dollar in you take I assume people would be buying these with reais, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I spend it's about like 5 to 1 right now, so I spend
Mm-hmm.
5 reais, I get one BTG Dol. And
Yeah.
then what do you do with those 5 reais then? Are you taking those? Are you investing those? Or are you putting those into like U.S. Treasuries? Are you putting those into like Brazilian government debt, or how are you kind of managing the the balance sheet and the those assets?
So the answer is the simpler and the more, I would say, bread and butter allocation that we can have. So everything parked in cash and short, high liquidity treasury bonds. Okay, I mean that's I think how a product like that should be. Okay, and again, otherwise you might have some problems down the road. Okay, so exactly like that. In this term, as boring as we can get, Aaron. Okay, boring is good in that sense, right? Yeah, no fancy algorithms, no fancy collateral, nothing like that. As boring as we can get.
So then, but there'd be one additional step. You'd have basically the currency conversion process if you had to
Mm-hmm.
sell those treasure. If there was a liquidity event and there was people asking, there's a mass redemption event, you would have to sell the treasury bonds into
Yeah.
dollars, and then you'd have to convert the dollars into reais, and then pay out the depositors or pay out
Mm-hmm.
the people that are redeeming their tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically the same model as a Circle or a Paxos or any of these other stable coin issuers. There is a bit of an extra step in there just because of the FX conversion, but obviously, like there's a
Yeah.
whole $4 trillion market around FX, foreign exchange. So this isn't like it's not
And
a unsolvable problem,
yeah,
right?
and that's another advantage that we have as being a bank because we can pretty much be very competitive on the FX part when people are accessing from Brazil in reais. Okay, because again, Aaron, this is our one of our day-to-day routines, FX market. So it's nothing that we don't do every day, thousands of times. So we can be pretty much very competitive on the marks and the quotes, and the flow for us is I mean, it's a day-to-day business. We do plan to open also for issuance in USD. Okay, but again, we will move in phases. Okay, in a lot will depend on the demand of the market. Okay, but right now it's exactly like that. And again, being a bank put us in a good position to have that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then kind of I'd like to get some maybe anecdotal color here on just what level of demand you saw from your existing customers or just from kind of the market more broadly for these types of products. I mean, it's been I mean, it's you hear the narrative a lot that Brazilians are looking buying Tether and they're buying
Mm-hmm.
USDC and they're Mercado Bitcoin even they even just listed USDT
Mm-hmm.
just in light of the USDC depegging because people were looking for an alternative to USDC
Mm-hmm.
in that particular moment anyway. And I mean, just talk about a bit about what's the demand that you're seeing from customers for stable coins, like specifically as a portfolio, as a hedge in their portfolio, essentially. How big what's the addressable market here?
Yeah, I'll put in two ways. Okay, first because we already have USDC in our platforms. Okay, but since we launched BTG Dol, I mean there was a big demand from clients. Okay, especially this week that the dollar is going down and the real is appreciating. So right now we are pretty much, I will not say surprised, but happy with the traction that the product is encountering in our channels of distribution. Okay, so I mean, in terms of the AUC, it's growing as one of the biggest one in our platform, comparing to other, let's say, native cryptos. And again, we already had an option similar that is USDC. Okay, and the fact that now people are adopting and we're having the traction on BTG Dol. I think it's a good indication that some of the things that we are discussing here about the differentiation that we have are showing that are true. Okay.
Great, great. And then maybe talk a bit about the utility of the token. So if I purchase this and it's in my
Hmm.
portfolio and I say, okay, maybe I want to use this to pay somebody or I want to withdraw this to maybe my cold storage or something, am I able to do that or am I kind of fixed inside the platform for right now?
Right now, you are fixed, okay? But again, if you look to all the steps that we did in crypto, we move in steps. We move as fast as as fast as we can, but always making sure that the market's ready for the next step, that we are ready for the next step, that the regulators are ready for the next step. So, for instance, when we launched Mint, we launched with let's say close the doors, okay? 2 months after, we open the doors to withdrawals and deposits in crypto. The same thing will happen in with BTG Dol. Right now, you are you buy with reais, you sell reais. Next phase will be allowing people to move back and forth from our platform using BTG Dol to transfer to let's say a wallet, and even Aaron, I mean to explore other utilities for the token, which I think will be there, right? Because again, Brazilians need dollars when they travel. They need dollars to buy stuff. So there's a lot of possibilities to use BTG Dol in
Oh,
the future. We move in steps, okay?
yep,
And that
yep,
right now, the utility right now is to have an easy, efficient, and safe exposure to dollars, okay?
yep.
Next, we'll probably open this for people to transfer to their personal wallets. and even explore some, let's say, more day-to-day utilities in the future, like, well, payments, and that's the beauty of the technology. Because I mean, as the rails are being built, we will have more opportunities to use the token.
Great, great. And yeah, I think it's important to note that like this is part of the process of
Yes.
just getting the product up and then figuring out how you like the withdrawals are a whole nother issue as far as kind of AML KYC and like there's the
Mm-hmm.
technical specifics of it and kind of the whole interoperability. There's a whole laundry list of extra stuff you have to worry about when it comes to withdrawals. So that
Mm-hmm.
is how you've seen a lot of major platforms come on. I think even with like Nubank,
Yeah.
like PayPal. I mean, that was, I mean, even Robinhood. I mean, they didn't allow withdrawals. So it's fairly standard that when these kind of, I guess, TradFi
Yeah.
or fintech companies come on, they don't necessarily allow
We.
the withdrawals immediately. So even though some of the maximalists on Twitter or whatever like don't think it's pure enough, but it's part of the iterative process, right? I mean, is there a possibility of offering any kind of yield on these coins? I mean, not necessarily that okay, we're going to go engage in crazy take your
Mm-hmm.
funds and engage in crazy pancake swap yield farming
Mm-hmm.
adventures, but
Mm-hmm.
even if it's just okay, we're taking this. We're taking these funds. We're going to park them in U.S. Treasuries, paying 5%.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to return, 2%, for instance, to the holder as kind of an incentive. Because I guess USDC and USDT don't. None of these other coins really pay like a natural
Mm-hmm.
yield like that. You have to go and sort of do it
Yeah.
yourself, and that So is that something that's maybe on the roadmap or something that you guys have considered?
It is definitely okay. Although there is still a huge gray zone in this, is that if I can do this right now, because if we start, well, offering yields, the securities issue might come into place. Okay,
Mm,
and this is something that right now, not only what's happening in the US but also here in Brazil, it's a big issue. Okay, and everything that can be understood as a security is something that we won't be able to touch right now. But
yeah,
as you know, the regulation in Brazil is moving, and so I think eventually, when we can have, let's say, the regulatory certain that we can use this, even if it will be treated as a security, then I think will be probably the next phase. Okay, which is already happening. Let's say our checking accounts. Okay, so it will be again something standard, right?
sure, sure. And then on the regulatory front, I mean, what was there a regulatory process or consultative process you had to go through to have this product approved? I'm just thinking of, I mean, if somebody in the U.S. tried doing this, it would be years worth of lawsuits
Mm-hmm.
and paperwork and
Mm-hmm.
just getting kicked around from agency to agency. What was the process like for you?
I mean, the advantage in Brazil in that field is that, well, we have a much simpler regulatory, I would say, environment. I will not say that we had to go through, let's say, official approvals, but we are talking on a regular basis with the Brazilian regulators, okay, and making sure they understand everything that we do in terms of service and products, and always with an open conversation, and always again making sure that we only move to the next step, to the next phase, when we are completely confident, not only about, well, the markets being ready, we are being ready, and the regulators being ready. What I usually say, Aaron, is, I mean, we we adapted the startup mantra a little bit here, okay? Because we cannot go with the move fast and break things here. So our mantra here is move as fast as we can without breaking things, okay? So that's what we can do. So we tend to be a little faster than, well, most of the other traditional firms that are entering into crypto. But I mean, we always have to make sure that we are following every regulation, every compliance, every operational procedures that we have at BTG. So it's not just the regulators. There's also our internal standards that we need to comply. Okay.
And what's been the reception from kind of the broader industry, maybe outside of Brazil? You've gotten some nice media pickup. I saw Reuters picked it up. CoinDesk picked it up. You did a segment on CoinDesk TV. There's a few other, it's been in a few other places. Just kind of curious as to what's been the reaction, from other folks who may have, this for them a bank
Mm-hmm.
issuing a stable coin is sort of a pipe dream at this point.
I think, I mean, it was better than was that I was expecting. Okay, so not a lot of pushbacks, not even from the maximalists, as far as I know right now. And I mean the reception from not only the international media but also to our network outside Brazil was very good. Better than I was expecting, not only in terms of reach but also in terms of sentiment. Okay, Aaron, in the when you talk to the US guys, for instance, okay, oh man, I wish we could be doing this right now. So there's some sense of disappointment, which for me, I mean, it's a situation that I never experienced before in my, let's say, 3 decades in the markets. Okay, and I think for us in Brazil and for the PG at the end is good. Okay, so very good reception. Uh, a lot of people reaching us, trying to explore possible products and possible synergies to use BTG Dol. Okay, so right now I'm very happy with the reception. Okay, uh, and again,
Great.
the only thing is that, well, take to the gringos still look to Brazil as like some different odd place, right? So it's good that they understand that, well. There's a lot of very competent, serious people here doing interesting stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And another angle I find really interesting here is kind of tying this into some of the digital real conversation, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
gotten some new clarity onto how this system is going to operate, right? And we'll have kind of the two-tiered system. Digital real will operate as kind of a wholesale CBDC that circulates amongst
Mm-hmm.
financial institutions, and then each of these banks will be issuing their own basically tokenized
Mm-hmm.
reals, basically stable coins. And at first glance, you're kind of, when I first look at this, I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. But like these TradFi banks issuing their own stable coins, like they're not like, good luck with that. Good luck getting them to do that, right? And then, a couple weeks later, here you are issuing your own stable coin. So, things are moving pretty quickly here. I think so. It's some of the infrastructure or maybe the question here would be like, how do you see this infrastructure and this kind of trail that you've blazed being applied to other areas, inclusive of kind of this digital real system that is
Mm-hmm.
forthcoming.
I think, and it's very interesting, right? Last week I was in the US, San Francisco, New York, and although people are talking more and more about Brazil and the crypto communities because, well, the regulation is moving there, things that we are moving. Uh, Fewer people know and understand what is being done in terms of the central bank agenda here with the Real Digital. Okay, and they have a very good understanding of the technology. They have a very, I mean, I would say, forward-looking vision of what this technology can bring to the financial industry. And the way that we see is that, like, they have pretty much the similar vision than what we have. This is those are new technology, new infrastructure for the markets that we offer, like programmability. Brazil, as you know, we don't have problems with payments. Our payments with Pix works pretty well. So the next phase will be, okay, how we can introduce programmability to the system. The inspiration is DeFi, okay, but how can we do whatever DeFi is doing in, let's say, compliant and regulated way, okay? And again, using the, let's say, the not private money, but the let's say central bank money. But the way I see it is that, well, these the Real Digital is just one piece of this whole infrastructure, okay? And this whole infrastructure, they're focusing privacy, interoperability, and decentralization and programmability. And we pretty much understand that, well, we'll be able, as soon as the project evolves, to have, let's say, BTG Dol interacting with the tokenized deposits and so on and so forth. Imagine that, well, instead, well, if we had to use, well, actually to send a Pix to our platforms to buy BTG Dol, you can pretty much use a token that is a tokenized deposit, and we can do everything on the blockchain run by smart contracts. It will be way more efficient than what the way that we proceed right now. Okay, so I think we are thinking this convergence view. Okay, in a way to, well, do first everything that we are doing in a much more efficient way, and next phase will be to, well, bring new types of products to the market. Okay, I think that that will happen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other question I had here was specifically on, you've got a USD peg stablecoin up and running now. The banks will eventually be issuing what effectively amount to be like BRL, stable, like reais as stable
Mm-hmm.
coins essentially. That won't be for a few more years still. In the meantime, is there demand for a BRL, like a Brazilian real peg stable coin in the market right now? Obviously, we have BRZ, but that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
fallen on some hard times now, given some of the FTX connections.
Mm-hmm.
But is there demand for a real pegged stable coin, or is the whole point of stable coins in the eyes of your customers really to get out of reais and into dollars?
I think there is room for a BRL stablecoin for sure. Not as big as USD, because I mean, at the end, man, crypto runs in stablecoins. Okay, so 130 billion of that in huge volumes, because people are using as well one instrument to transact. And this, well, it is in USDs, okay, in USD. We could have, let's say, a more efficient rails if we interact with a BRL stablecoin. But and we have explored this idea in the past, okay, Aaron. But as soon as the central bank started with their agenda of the Real Digital, for us it was way more, okay, guys. This is all. This is There's still an agenda, and we as a bank, let's wait for this agenda to touch, let's say, BRL stablecoin. So it's as simple as that. The answer right now. Okay, but
Got it.
again, I think it won't be the same demand as you have, for instance, for USD stablecoin, because again, I what's the case right now is, well, to interact with DeFi. DeFi don't run on BRL. DeFi run on USD. So, well, sending money abroad, people don't send BRL abroad. People send dollars. Okay, so again, and again, for payments, it's a problem solved in Brazil already. So that's why I think that USD is a much bigger case than BRL.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Um, so let's maybe transition a little bit here. We'd love to learn a bit more about the Mynt platform that you released. I think it was back in August or September of last
Yes.
year. That's your basically your kind of retail facing application that, as far as I know, like anybody can sign up for, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
any like existing customer. Is it only existing customers, or is it just anybody can
No,
sign up for it?
no, anybody.
Okay,
Just Brazilians though, okay?
to anybody. You've got 20 months. Talk a
Mm-hmm.
bit about just the uptake. How's that been going? What's been the kind of the reception from the market for a product like this? Particularly given that there's competition for in Brazil for that retail customer is really
Mm-hmm.
kind of heating up. There's a lot of different players angling for those customers. So maybe talk a bit about like what's the experience been, what's kind of the unique value proposition that you're bringing.
Well, I mean, I think last year was tough, right? Because I mean, we launched and then probably, if not the worst timing to launch, probably very close to that, right? The second half last year for crypto was like a mess. But again, we cannot think about the short term if you are building a business that will last. So we need to have like a long term view, and this year is a completely different environment. Okay, the markets are performing much better than last year. We think we have a unique product for the retail, and by that I mean it's a very intuitive and simple experience. We invest a lot of time and efforts in content, so on the very same app that you can follow your positions, that you can transact, that you can buy and sell, you can learn about crypto, you can understand about crypto, and so we are very, I mean, confident in, say, proud about the platform. The adoption is picking up. Okay, some of the events last year after FTX, it helped us a lot. Okay, because people realize, okay, guys, maybe we need some, let's say, more established firms to offer us these products, and this year is not different. So we're very happy with I mean, the path until now. We are also working a lot in our institutional product, okay, that we think, well, in Brazil, it's something that we grow a lot in the next years. CVM, which is the Brazilian securities regulator, is already working on the law, making it more easier for, let's say, general asset managers to invest direct in crypto. So I mean, we have a very promising, I think, a path down the road. Okay, and we hope will be the best option for people there to have their exposure to crypto using us. Again, uh, it's always the convergence view. Okay, given all the freedom that we have in crypto with the good things that we have in traditional finance. Okay, because we've experienced a lot of these problems before. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and I think I would assume that having this platform connected, with the brand of a large bank, large like regulated, trusted financial institution. I mean, maybe a turnoff to some subset of users, but for the majority of kind of retail users, uh, especially post FTX, that would probably be a strong signal. Like, okay, this is if I'm looking to invest in these assets, this is probably a good place to do it. And also, it's almost like a vote of confidence where, okay, is this whole industry a scam? Is all this the whole thing imploding? But if these guys are doing, they're continuing to roll out these products, then there must be something. It's a validation, right? That it's a
I
legitimate
think
asset
so.
class. It's a legitimate industry, and I think it's another area that makes, um, you know, uh, what you're doing and just the Brazil ecosystem so unique, right? Because in the U.S., I mean, I'm banking with Wells Fargo right now. Like, there's no chance that they'll be rolling out a crypto brokerage platform anytime soon. Like,
Yeah.
I guarantee you that's not anywhere close to their roadmap. So, and as far as I know, BTG is you're the only of the major banks in Brazil to have a crypto brokerage platform at this point. I know some of
Yes.
the others have been talking about it, or They're doing,
Yes.
digital asset divisions and studying
Mm-hmm.
it, but nobody's actually released a product like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously there's like She's Pay and there's Nubank and there's some of
Mm-hmm.
these others, but none of the other kind of like legacy, kind of
Mm-hmm.
the kind of the old guard banks, I guess, of Brazil have yet to really dive into this. Um, and then maybe talk a bit more about kind of what you guys have been working on the security, on the kind of the asset tokenization front.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you mentioned back in, was it 2018?
Yeah.
You were
Nineteen. Yeah.
issued, or 19, yeah, 19. You
Yes.
issued one
Yeah.
of the first asset, sort of real estate
Yeah.
backed tokens. Um, that project recently wound down from what I read. Maybe talk a little bit about what kind of you learned from that, and then I think last time we spoke, you were slightly bearish on asset tokens for
Mm-hmm.
the immediate future, just because of some of the regulatory issues and that would kind of kind of put a damper on some of the efficiency gains and some of the whole reasons that you would want these things in a tokenized format,
Yeah.
anyways. But maybe talk a bit about just kind of how are you guys viewing kind of the asset tokenization world right now?
Well, it's there's an interesting point, Aaron, because again, we started exploring technology as infrastructure through tokenization. Okay, and again, we are a very hands-on institution, so we need to do something for real to test. Okay, so it was not like, well, issue in a company here, buy from another company there, and then we can. Do a Zé com Zé, as we say here in Brazil, okay, with like, and so we did a real project, real money, real clients, and it was like a lot of learnings in this project, not only about, well, how ready the technology was to deploy a product like that, but also how prepared was the market to accept a product like that. And so for us was an excellent product. And after the we issued RIT-BZ, which RIT-BZ is the name of the project. Okay, uh, our idea is, okay, guys, the technology is already sound. We can do real stuff using it. Now we need to have a platform to allow us to do that at scale. Okay, and then that's where, let's say, the beginning of Mynt started. uh, as we start to develop, two things became clear. First, we will only be able to do tokenization at scale because most of this tokenization use case will touch securities. We will only be able to do that when we have a new regulation. Okay, because otherwise we're gonna have to be asking for exemptions for every new product, and then you cannot scale. Okay,
Yeah.
and then what I see a lot of people trying to do is, okay, you do everything that you need to do using the traditional rails, and then you put a token on top of it, right? So for me, that doesn't make sense. You will not be able to bring the efficiency that we can bring, use this technology to the end users. So for me, it makes no sense. Uh, and so, I mean, and the second thing is that we start to realize, okay, tokenization is a huge use case for the crypto blockchain technology. But there's also, let's say, crypto as a new asset class that we also need to explore. And so that's where we broaden up our understanding. And then Mint, I would say the Mint idea was born. We have to have like a platform that will allow us not only to offer traditional crypto. It's funny to say traditional crypto, right? But let's say a native crypto, but also using it to, as soon as we can, offer products in a tokenized way. BTG Dol is a tokenized project. Okay, it's not a security, but is a tokenized project. And again, uh, uh, right now, more banks are talking about, well, we will be tokenizing everything. I think we'll be moving to a world that everything will be tokenized. But again, probably uh, using the technology as a native instrument, not building like, well, Frankenstein structures just to be able to say there is a token on it. Okay, there's no sense of that. And I think
Yeah.
that the When you put that together with the central bank agenda, this new infrastructure, that's everything aligned. Okay, so hi there. Let's have an infrastructure that will allow the market to innovate, to use the programmability capabilities of blockchain to do tokenization. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the CVM letter that came out recently, earlier this month, kind of
Mm-hmm.
underscores some of the concerns that you just mentioned with regards to, like, the technology is there we to do these things, but the kind of the framework and the legal framework and the regulatory framework is not really there to facilitate the productive, really the productive, like, use of these technologies at scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where some of the with that letter, it was kind of saying, okay, like, if you want to issue your own token, it's probably going to be a security, and you need to hire a securitization firm to come
Mm-hmm.
and basically do all this, which it's going to end up costing, it's the same exact procedure that you would use to issue a regular, like, non-tokenized security.
Mm-hmm.
When it's and then obviously they were saying, like, well, you can, if you want to do a token, like, you can still go in the regulatory sandbox of the CVM, but in that case you have no, that's not a scalable thing either, right? And not having it tokenized and not being able to have access to these assets trading on a secondary market of sorts
Mm-hmm.
really sort of negates any value that the token would actually bring. So we're just, I think the industry seemed a bit sort of confused and not particularly happy, but about that ruling from or that letter
Mm-hmm.
from the CVM. But it does seem to underscore your thesis here that we're not, like, the technology's there, but the the framework to do these things at scale is not, right. We've got ways to go
Yeah.
on that front.
Yeah.
Um, and anyway, would maybe
I
love your kind of your reaction
I
there.
I think you're right, Aaron. But let me try to bring let's say maybe a more uh, brighter view. Um People need to understand that, well, regulators, they have a job, okay, and they have responsibilities, and in some cases they they might incur into problems if they don't enforce their jobs, their mandates, okay. So there is a securities regulation in place, and it's not because you will put a token on top of a security that, well, it's not a security anymore, right? So a lot of these tokens that are being offered in the Brazilian market are securities, okay. uh, but looking on more the bright side, we have the sandbox, okay. Okay, sandbox is an experiment, yes, but I think it's an excellent way when we are dealing with new disruptive technologies for the regulators to understand what they need actually to regulate. Okay. Um and in this CVM letter, think for a moment, compared to what the SEC is doing in the US. The CVM basically, okay, they say, "Oh, guys, okay, you did, but listen, you cannot do this anymore. But if you want to do right now, we have these options for you to do. You can go to sandbox, or you can try to use, let's say, a securitization to do that. That's good. I mean, I think that's the best they can do given the regulation that we have in place. Of course, will this allow us to do tokenization at scale? No, but to do that, for me, it's clear that we need to evolve the regulation. Okay, security regulation, Aaron, it's old, and it's not that it's old. It was built to an analog world. We live in a digital world, so all the requirements that we tend to have in security regulations, It's where our, let's say, stocks used to be a piece of paper. Your bond used to be a piece of paper where you strip a coupon and you give to the company and you get some dollar notes back as your coupon. Yes, but I mean, it's true. A lot of things like, well, central depository and underwriters, all of these was made to make things work in an analog way. So a lot of these functions, they won't disappear, but in a new regulation, they will be done in a completely different way because the technology now allow us to do in a completely different way more efficient, by the way. But again, right now, I think trying to fit the new technology in the old regulation is like trying to, well, put square pegs in round roles. So it's, I mean, it's uh, uh, and it took a while for me to have this perception, okay? But right now, we need to work in evolving the regulations. Again, the regulations won't go away, and the market needs to understand that, okay? And sometimes, no, that we need, okay, guys, I mean, first there's the technology, then there's the regulation. And again, compare what the CVM did with the SAC. And again, I think we are in a pretty much good position here in Brazil, okay? Let me just add one thing. The problem
Sure.
that we have as the CVM, they lack resources to work faster in building this new regulation. That's the main problem that I see right now in the Brazilian market for removing faster, not only with the sandbox, but eventually to, well, bring in a new regulation.
Yeah, it's a lot of great points there, and particularly throughout the U.S., I think it is always important to have a benchmark. When we're comparing things, right? And yeah, compare this letter compared to what we're seeing out of the U.S. is it's barely even a slap on the wrist, right? And I think everybody, the staff of the CVM and João Pedro Nascimento, the new
Hmm.
president of the CVM, has been public. He's made dozens of public statements now, sort of talking about how he sees uh, cryptocurrency and these new technologies and tokenization as part of the financial system of the future, and he wants to support it. He wants to be pro innovation. He doesn't seem it doesn't seem like he's just sort of saying talking points to sort of befriend the industry or something. He seems like he actually believes it.
Yeah.
But obviously, right, you have to you can't just sort of just waive all the rules because you think this new technology looks fun. Let's just let them do whatever they want. Um, so it is important to keep that in context. Um, so anyway, well, let's kind of wind things up here, or wind things down, I should say. What's in store for BTG digital assets for the rest of the year, and what do you see happening across the just the broader Brazil crypto ecosystem for the rest of this year?
Well, I mean, some things being cooked here. Like I said, something more aimed to institutional markets. Probably some investments as well. Uh, we again, we are we have a very strong conviction in our vision to the long term, although the timing is not that clear, okay, because the timing depends of the regulation, depends on the markets, depends on a bunch of different stuff, but we're pretty much confident. Uh, there's a lot of interest in Brazil right now, okay? And I mean, we are working hard to position ourselves as one of the leading players in these markets. And again, trying to be as collaborative as we can, okay? Because we need to grow the market in Brazil. Crypto is a good market in Brazil, but it's still very tiny if you compare to the overall financial market. So, right, so there's a lot of room to grow, and we try to work together with all the market players to first bring a proper narrative to the market and educate not only our clients but try to help to educate the regulators and the clients and the overall community about, okay, what is this new technology? What does it do? How can it help the market? How that is good for our economy? Uh, and also, I mean, bring all the products that we think we can bring to our clients at the end. Okay, and I pretty much I'm very, I mean, confident and excited about the let's say the rest of the year. Okay.
Great, great. Well, Andre, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been really great having you here. It's great to learn more about BTG Dol and just what you guys are doing with that, as well as the rest of your efforts on the digital asset front. So, really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for coming on.
No, man, for my pleasure, Aaron. Always a great talking to you. Hope we can have more opportunities to that in the future, and hope we can launch a lot of different products that will allow us to have this conversation again. Okay, and so pleasure, and for everybody that is listening to us, pay attention to what's happening in Brazil. Pay attention to what we're doing because things are moving.
Awesome, awesome. All righty. Well, thanks, Andre. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back soon with another great episode.